Hi, my name is Omar Herrera Arizmendi. I'm the founder and the executive director of the Ponce Project Foundation, which is based in the US. I have the pleasure to be here with one of the emerging composers in Mexico, J.E. Hernández. Hi, um, I wanted to talk to him to know more about him, uh, his, uh, his career, what his latest projects, and so on. Just introduce him to the general public, both in Mexico and the U.S. So let's start with the beginning. Can you tell us where you were born and how did you start getting involved in music?
Sure. Yeah. So I was born in Villahermosa, Tabasco. That's in one of the most southernmost states in Mexico. And I came to the United States when I was 11. My interest in music began at the earliest age that I can remember is from Cri Cri, one of the seminal forces of children's music in Mexico before losing a little bit of that identity. But that's the earliest musical memories that I have. And later on, interestingly enough, as a kid, I was flipping channels through the television, and I stumbled upon MTV, which had two music videos I remember, which were Daft Punk and Gorillaz, so very popular music at the time. And then I came here, and then when I was 14, my stepbrother was already playing guitar, and I thought he was cool, so I wanted to be cool. So I asked him to teach me some guitar. They bought me a guitar, a very cheap guitar. He started teaching me guitar, which I hated immediately. I did not enjoy the process. So then 3 years later, my grandmother, I asked her to buy me a sampler, an electronic sampler. And because a lot of the bands I was listening to and hip hop artists that I really liked were using that specific sampler, which I still have. And so I asked her to buy it for me, which you could plug a guitar into, and then you could overdub and record and sample records and do everything on it. So I started doing that and also playing guitar again, but only improvising, and bass and drums. And I started buying instruments. I even bought a sitar. I still have sitar, which was very expensive, and I didn't really have the money at the time. I was just, a teenager, but like banjo, mandolin, all sorts of things. To overdub and record music myself because I couldn't find anyone else to. I wasn't an orchestra. I wasn't classically taught. I didn't grow up with orchestra. I didn't grow up playing in a marching band, anything like that. So it was just me and in high school I had a group of, a band, and we all switched instruments, so we were constantly improvising. That was the kind of music that I grew up making.
And you grew up here in Texas, or what was it?
Yes, it was in Houston. Yeah, so we got here in Houston. Again, I was 11, and then we moved about a year after that to Katy, which is 45 minutes west of Houston. Yeah.
I see. Okay. And then so you went to high school here, and then you went to you have a degree from UH, right, University of Houston.
Yes. So I went to high school here. I went back to Mexico for 1 year after I got my residency because I missed it. But it was I was already a teenager and missed a lot of years, so it was very difficult. And I went to a public school, which Mexican public schools are kind of hit or miss because of the resources that are available. And then I came back, and I graduated from high school, and I started going to community college for a while and working. I spent a year as a rail car mechanic just because of all the things that I was doing. Because it was either going to be physics or music, and I was spending a lot of time really trying to decide what was worth doing because we didn't have a lot of money. So whatever I did choose was going to be a huge investment for my family, and I wanted to be right in what I was choosing.
And you obviously chose music.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I had already been doing it for so long. It looked at some point. So I was all self-taught, all by ear. That's how I recorded, performed, wrote, whether it was visual sketches or recording things. And then at some point, as I kept amassing instruments, I thought, okay, great, time to get a piano. And I got one, and then I thought I should also learn how to read and write music. So I found it. I really like Philip Glass. That was like the first classical person I ever listened to at depth. I already knew about Beethoven and Bach, but not like this. And so I found a page of his music online, one page, and I printed it out, put it on my wall, and I tried to teach myself, and I thought, I need help. Yeah, so then I switched gears in community college, and I was very lucky to have a professor, Dr. Aaron Alon. He's a Rice graduate, and he was just very, very good at getting my theory up to speed.
So you were what, in your early 20s here?
But I must have been 22 when I started the community college. So it was some years after graduating high school.
I see.
Yeah.
And then how did you end up at UH?
Yeah, so I did 3 semesters of theory, and I got, I aced all the courses, and it was easy for me. I really liked to do it, and I realized that I enjoyed putting like records and music together. I really enjoyed organizing music. So I knew that really if I wanted to do music going forward at a university level, it had to be as a composer. So I asked Aaron, like, hey, what schools do you think I should apply? And he said, you should try the University of Houston. He recommended Marcus Maroney and Rob Smith, who are still there. Yeah. And I thought, okay, great. So I spent some time learning how to play a few pieces because that was part of the audition requirement, which were...
On the piano?
Yeah, it was a Prokofiev. And mind you, I'm a guitarist, really. So piano was secondary instrument, or 7th instrument, if you will. And so I spent a long time learning a Prokofiev, and I got it really well. And then I had about 2 weeks left before the audition, and I realized, oh my God, I got to learn my second piece, which was a Bach. It was a prelude in C minor that's not in the collection. It's like one that was recently found.
Oh, okay.
But I spent 2 weeks just really, really learning it, probably in an unhealthy way. But I auditioned, I went through the audition process, and I was able to get it.
And you studied with Rob Smith?
Marcus Murray.
Oh, okay, I see. And you got there, then you an undergrad, or?
Yes, yeah, and because I had done a lot of community college courses already, I only had 3 years. I did the degree in only 3 years.
I see. So, I went to University of Houston too, so I'm familiar with their music. They have a new music ensemble. I assume you were part of it.
The Aura Music Ensemble.
Aura, yes.
Yeah, I helped Rob direct. I was an assistant for Rob with that, and then they performed one of my pieces as part of the Seraphim contest that they hold.
Okay. And when did you graduate? This is recent?
Yes, 2 years ago, so 2020. So right as the pandemic was hitting. Yeah.
Oh, I see. And that's a very interesting and unique upbringing because you didn't have the proper, music upbringing, the scholastic when they teach you how to read and scales, all that. You learn more by ear. So that gives you, I think, a unique identity as a composer, right? I mean, and then you realize, okay, I need more tools, so read and all that stuff, and you got the pretty fast it sounds, and then you were accepted in the university. I think that's awesome, right? And then got a degree there, and so I'm interested. I've been always interested in how they teach composition, because. Did they guide your style? Did they ask you to write like a canon?
Yeah, I mean,
How does it work?
It's unique for every student. Every student has different needs, and I think for me, I was really about. So even today, I don't really have a problem with ideas. That's not really an issue for me as a composer. Like when I got to the university level, I knew I wanted. One of my first pragmatic goals was to write a piece in ABA form. I really wanted to do that successfully, so I told Marcus right away. I said, "I want to do that. Can you help me get there?" And very systematically taught me, like, here's the theme, here's the musical sentence, here's this form, do it this way. And I did it that way, and it was successful, And I thought, great, since I can do this, now I can take all the skills that I built up with before I knew how to read and write music and combine them, and then try to really expand from there. So yeah, it's unique for every student, and for me it was a lot of, the theory, I just did it on my own because we were taught by teaching assistants, which wasn't quite up to the standard that I wanted. I really wanted a very robust theory. So I had to do that on my own, and then I would bring it to my lesson and talk to Marcus and say, hey, I'm trying to do this and that, and then he would show me scores or show me examples, or we talk about his music or we talk about other people's music, and go from there. He really stewarded my curiosity in the right way. I
see. So would you say, you're fairly young still, so would you say you already have like a defined style?
No.
Has it evolved? How would you say?
So I never did that when I was younger. Okay. So I still don't do that. Like, I don't think, I think there were certain times when my music had a certain sound, but it was only because I was interested in that for a little while, and then my interest changed continuously. When I was I can still remember being 14 and having early access to the internet and being able to listen to all the music in the world, it seemed. So I really liked, like one of my favorite bands still is this Japanese band, Koenji Hake, and they play Zool music, which is inspired by a French band called Magma, which is a type of prog rock, but it's the most insane music I've ever heard. Okay. And I thought it was amazing. And I was always very omnivorous in listening, so I think in the music I write, I'm very omnivorous still. But what I would say that is consistent is like a heuristic approach where I have a set of tools that I apply to try to get to a result. And obviously sometimes the same tools show up. Like right now, my harmonic language is very chordal, because I like to live in a kind of ambiguous tonal space, right? So not really defined, not functional, but still something about it is very much rooted in the overtone series. And I would say that's indicative of my music, but I wouldn't say that I have a style, so to speak.
Do you have a composer that is like, besides, I guess, Philip Glass, you said, but any other composer that is a major influence in you?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I could say Philip Glass, and generally the minimalist movement was a big influence on me. Okay. I'm still very much a pattern thinker, but the music of Silvestre Revueltas is a huge influence on me. I still think he's the seminal, one of the seminal thinkers of the past century, just without, anywhere in the world. I mean, it's
correct, yeah.
Outstanding talent, vision, color, everything you could possibly want from music. I think Revueltas is somebody who was doing it. And I very much still like to, try to inhabit the same space as Revueltas.
Yeah, Revueltas is amazing for sure. Too bad he died so
yeah, 10 years is too little. Like, that's all we had.
Yeah.
That's all we ever got. It's very sad.
Yeah. And, okay, so, and then, another thing I want to talk with you is that you invited the Ponce project to do a collaboration with you and also a group called Novel Motion, right, which is a dance company, and then you went through the process of we got a grant and all that, so it's actually you actually, I don't know if you finished the composition, but there's a composition that's going to be premiere in one of the most important halls in Houston, right, at the Wortham Center, and in February 24 and 25, right?
Yes.
Can you talk about that composition? And I know there's a story behind it that that has shaped your personality and life, right?
Sure.
Do you mind talking about that?
Yeah, sure. So so yes, this is a grant that we received from Performing Arts Houston, one of the biggest performing arts organizations in town, and it's part of their New Now Commission project, which seeks specifically Houston artists to submit proposals and then to put on the performances of who they've selected through a long committee process. And so the piece that we are working on together, titled Desert Shelter, is about the relationship of the body and the crossing of the Sonoran Desert that migrants from Mexico and Central and South America make to get into the United States. And that is inspired partly by my experiences. I myself haven't crossed the desert, but I was detained by ICE almost 10 years ago now, 2013, when I was 20. And I spent 60 days detained right here in Houston, in the Houston Detention Center. And through that whole time, I met an enormous amount of people. And a lot of them were people who had crossed the desert or who were planning on crossing the desert after they were getting, deported. For whatever reason, and it was obviously the most impactful. I don't want to say it was the most impactful, but it was one of the most difficult experiences I've had, for sure. And I never forgot about those people. I just never forgot about them, and I thought that it would be a crime to let those memories just like go away, or to let those people sort of die. And in Mexico we call them personas invisibles, because that is what they are. They are totally invisible, and it's a very complicated situation. But that, I knew when I was detained that I was still a musician, right? So this is like 3 years after I got my sampler. That was the same year I was working as a railcar mechanic, and so I was living and working with the same kind of groups of people. And I knew then that I wanted to write music about it, and I wanted to make it a trilogy. And so that started last year with a piece I wrote called Voces Fantasmas, which is about the detained experience specifically, so it's more about me, and then little by little I'm trying to build it out, so it's not just about me. And so so Desert Shelter gets its title from a story that I heard, where as people are crossing the desert, they look for shelter. You know, the longer they spend in the desert, the more their clothes wear away, the more their bodies start getting consumed by everything, by the environment, by themselves, right? This is the relationship to the body that the work is about. And they seek shelter in many, many different ways. But one of the main ways they get that is by these bushes that they call nichos. So that would translate roughly to niches, which is referring to space, a niche space, which are brushes that are curled and gnarled by heat. And so they seek shelter there, and that's where a lot of remains are found consistently. If you were to go to the Sonoran Desert today, you were to look for those, you would more than likely find some sort of remain. Now, the human remains don't last very long in the desert, but other things do, like plastic bottles, shoes, especially shoes. There are so many shoes that are found in there. So that's where this work is today. It's a continuation of something I've been doing, which is born out of what I have lived and what people who are important to me have lived.
Wow, okay, many things there. So, can you get into specific details of the composition? How does the music combines with the dance and the motion of the dancers? Is there a choreography? What's the instrumentation?
Yeah,
How
so
long is it?
yeah, so the piece is for string sextet, and it runs at around 24 minutes. And the relationship, Voces Fantasmas, I also work with a choreographer and dancers. And that's something I have been looking forward to do for a long time. I've always really appreciated dance and ballet, and it's something I really look forward to continue in my career. But I especially was interested in the way that, in how to, in my music, gesture towards, it's towards decay. I focused on that. I focused on what could the decay of sound do, and how could that, in many different ways, work, right? Any sound, has its decay. And so I thought, okay, let me focus on that and all the other tools that I have to bring that to the forefront of the composition.
So the decay kind of represents the decay
of the body, exactly. And it can in anything, right? Decay of ideology, of the spirit. I mean, when people are 12, 14, 19 days in the desert, they're down to their last goal, and sometimes they're even delirious. It's a very difficult situation. So I really focused on that element of my music, and then of course using everything else I have in my musical language to bring that to the front, and then relating it to dancers. I had to make practical choices as well, because they need to be able to hear things, events, rhythms, and put those together to their own actual bodily gestures. So that's the relationship that I focused on in the music.
I see. Wow, that's okay. That sounds very interesting. We're very much looking forward to hear and see this. So, do you have any plans for the third piece? Is already lurking in your mind?
Yeah. So the original trilogy, which I planned, has grown a little bit to accommodate a lot of different efforts right now. So this piece is kind of a first step into what I would have liked to be a ballet, which is related to this, and it would be an ideal ballet would be called Desert Souls, and it would be about taking that even further, the idea of what happens when people dissolve into the desert, quite literally. And then the other piece that I'm working on, and I've been working on for quite some time, is an orchestral work titled 33,000 Stolen Sunsets, or Parallax. And that title is a reference to, so in 2010, the Department of Homeland Security passed an appropriations bill, which is a standard kind of procedure for Congress, meaning they're appropriating, and this is in a neutral context, the word appropriation. They're appropriating taxpayer money to do something, right? This is what they do every time they want to do something, the Department of Homeland Security and any other department in the U.S. government. So in 2010, the Department of Homeland Security passed what has been nicknamed the bed mandate, which was a continuation of an effort to increase the population of migrants that are detained every day in U.S. detention centers, which is the one that directly affected my stay in a detention center. And so that specifically says that it's something like 33,000 300 and something people must be detained every day in U.S. detention centers, which is still in effect today. Now, they might reduce that number here and there, like they did with COVID, for whatever reason they might have done that, but that is still in effect. And one thing that was interesting about the detained experience for me was that I never saw the sun set or rise while I was there, which I thought, thinking of it now, is I can't think of a more basic kind of right as a living being, forget about just a human, a living being that has the capacity to perceive photons, light, sees the sun rise and set every day, and whether they think about it or not is not the conversation here. But I thought, wow, 33,000 people every day are deprived of a sunset and a sunrise. And that's where the title of that piece comes from. And that piece, the reason it's also subtitled Parallax is because I'm focusing on background versus foreground and twilight, which is a horizon. The idea of what happens when you see the horizon and things move at different speeds. And I'm trying to bring that forward in the music. But finding an orchestra to do it, all of that is in the future.
Yeah. Yes. No. I mean, okay. So I was going to ask you, sounds like maybe I'm wrong, but sounds like you don't really write for the general public, or is it? I mean, who's your audience when you write? It sounds like you want to make is it a political statement, or you want people to know about this, right, through the art? And I think it's very powerful and very genuine, but I also can see how some people wouldn't like this, right? It can be, I wouldn't say controversial, but it can be uncomfortable, right, to bring this up.
Yeah, and I think it is uncomfortable. My ideal audience are people who have gone through this just like me. Okay. So that they can see it and they can think, oh my God, I can actually live a normal life after this happened to me. Because one thing I can tell you about these desert crossings and the people from Central and South America often get kidnapped at the U.S.-Mexico border by narcos. Like, it's a very complicated thing. And then the detention centers, which are these kind of little factories of despair, is that it traumatizes you for life. Whether you are willing to admit it or not, or deal with it or not, I firmly believe it traumatizes you for life. I immediately denied it in my own life. I was 20, so I was young, and I thought, whatever, I can get over this immediately, instantly. And I tried instantly to forget it, which only led to emotional problems. And it wasn't really until 2017 that I was able to speak about it to someone outside of my family, which is it was a very intense body experience to even do so, which made me realize, oh wow, I haven't dealt with this at all. So my ideal audience are people like that who can see it and think, I can actually live after that happened to me and speak about it, and it's okay. And somebody cares about what happened to me. That's my ideal audience.
So it's like you're offering some kind of catharsis.
Yes, that would be the best way to put it. And so inherently in that, I know it's uncomfortable because some people don't know about this, and it seems absurd at the scale that it's happening, and it seems hard to believe, which I can understand. I understand why it's hard to believe. And in that sense, I would invite them too. I think anyone is welcome to that. Just in the same way that we can hear Messiaen's Quartet for the End of Time. I think this piece is totally living in the same space of coming from something that's really hurtful and deep in that way, and just profoundly hurtful, but can, in that sense, liberate you or provide you catharsis or a way to feel like you can move forward. And it doesn't limit anyone. This isn't a hands-off piece. It isn't like only these people can see it. I think anybody can see it and look at the humanity of what I'm trying to talk about. That's what